I was abroad relaxing when Xavier Yates was diagnosed with stomach cancer. The 100th missed call came. My 1.89-meter-tall male secretary answered the phone. "Where are you? Who is the person next to you?" I heard his voice on the other end of the line, almost breaking down. I couldn't help but snicker. Didn't we agree to keep things casual? Why can't you take it seriously? The script that Xavier Yates and I took was that of childhood sweethearts who grew apart. They had mutual feelings for each other as teenagers, but they never got around to popping the question. Then he met his destined girl, Evelyn Sue. Under pressure from the Yates family elders, the destined girl broke up with him on the eve of graduation and flew abroad alone. The disheartened Xavier Yates finished university with my company. He then started his own business. Just as his career took off and he gradually had the capital to compete with his family, his former eternal muse, who had abandoned him, chose to return to the country and sent her resume to his company. Xavier Yates, for reasons unknown, kept her on as his personal secretary. This was on the eve of the announcement of our two families' engagement strategic alliance. Up to this point in the story, it seems that I am going to take the role of the evil female lead. I will start to make things difficult for the heroine, keep causing trouble, and finally suffer the consequences. However, I will not do this. On the contrary, I understand Xavier Yates. After all, after I followed in his footsteps and also found a personal assistant who is 1.89 meters tall, I came to understand one thing. People always need an attentive companion by their side, especially alpha CEOs like us. I inherited the family company earlier than Xavier Yates. After all, Xavier Yates spent 3 years in high school and 2 years dating. I never stopped studying. In my freshman year, I mastered all the knowledge required for this attack. In the following 2 years, Xavier Yates was dating Evelyn Sue, holding hands with her and running after her. I, on the other hand, was introduced to international finance courses under my mother's guidance. During the summer vacation, Xavier Yates took Evelyn Sue for a joyride along the river. My mother and I flew abroad together to attend various financial-related symposiums in person. After this attack, I was admitted to the school and major I wanted almost effortlessly, and I began to formally accept the family's arrangement to study the operation and management of the company. Xavier Yates, however, failed this attack due to excessive sadness over a broken heart. The Xie family spent a lot of money to send him to a private university that had a good reputation among the wealthy. Unfortunately, it was in the same city as my university, and even in the same area. Mrs. Xie asked me to take care of her. I smiled and agreed, looking at Xavier Yates with deep and tender eyes. I believe that Ayen has just been temporarily hit. No matter what he becomes, I will stay by his side until he picks himself up again. The Yates family elders looked at me with a satisfied expression, even with some deeper considerations. If Xavier Yates doesn't improve himself, then the best way to expect him to protect the family business is to have a woman by his side who can bring him great benefits and is deeply in love with him. After that, the Xie family successively gave us 3 projects. My mother was also very happy about this. On the eve of my departure to attend university in capital city, she called me into the study. "What do you think of that Xie boy?" she asked me. So, I replied. To be honest, he's not even half as good as me. My mother laughed heartily at this, and patted my head affectionately. She said, Yuan, remember, in the face of interests, anything can become a weapon, and so can emotions. You can like other people, but this liking must never be higher than your ideals and ambitions. As for the Xie family, if you want to play along with them, then go ahead. Even if you really fall for him, it's fine. After all, men are men. Who says you can only have one? I lowered my head and contemplated for a moment, then raised my eyes at my mother and gave her a smile. In the eyes of Xavier Yates, I may have loved him desperately. When he was a freshman, in order to comfort him after he lost Evelyn Sue and couldn't get back on his feet, I would go to his dorm early every day to give him breakfast. It was always hot soup and buns that were to his taste. At first, he was a bit resistant and told me, Yuan, I realized after meeting Wanwan that I had always regarded you as my younger sister. I will never fall in love with you, so please don't do this extra effort. I just laughed and handed him the bun in my hand. After turning away, I posted a status update visible only to my friends on the Xie family wall. Morning jog over. The photo showed the corner of Xavier Yates School. Soon both Xie parents gave me a like. Our families have been discussing a business collaboration recently, and it's been going surprisingly well. I put away my phone, zipped up my sportswear, and continued running along the trail, which was littered with fallen leaves. I didn't lie either. I was indeed on my morning jog. A qualified business successor needs to be in good physical condition. I ran 4 kilometers every morning, and it didn't take much effort to detour outside Xavier Yates' school and bring him breakfast from the roadside stall. Later, I started participating in various entrepreneurship competitions for college students to practice. For the high-profile ones, I would also give Xavier Yates a hand. Adding a team member's name to the team moved Xavier Yates to no end. He confessed to me after a drunken night, saying, Yuan, I've noticed for a long time that you're always standing in the corner, silently doing things for me. I really don't want to let you down. I tilted my head to one side, not saying anything, as if I hadn't heard. After Xavier Yates sobered up the next day, he regretted confessing his feelings to me on impulse. We both tacitly agreed not to mention it again. But the look in his eyes when he looked at me became more and more guilty. Of course, he wasn't the only one who felt guilty towards me. He used to feel that I was silently contributing because I was busy giving favors to the boys and girls around me who had a cooperative relationship with the family company. Their needs were different. Some just wanted to copy my homework, some wanted to use my name to reassure their families when they were out having fun, and some needed some emotional value in return. I was so busy that I didn't have time to tell anyone. But I actually gave Xavier Yates the illusion that I loved him lowly to the ground. I did have a good impression of Xavier Yates before he screwed himself up in order to fall in love with Evelyn Sue. Among the people in my circle of people who I was selling favors to, the one I paid the most attention to was Xavier Yates. I even paid attention to the point of exceeding the boundaries I had set for myself. There was nothing else to do, because at that time, Xavier Yates was good and decisive enough. He was smart and could easily make himself shine. At the same time, he treated me very specially, and everyone around us tacitly agreed that we would become a couple. Sometimes I would stare at his figure in a daze, thinking that this was not bad. But ever since Evelyn Sue appeared, Xavier Yates had skipped classes, smoked cigarettes, gotten into fights, and wanted to pursue freedom. His grades plummeted, but his drag racing skills improved. In the end, he was given a criminal record for underage and unlicensed driving. The Xie boy is ruined, my mother commented at the time. And I agreed with her, so I bowed my head at light speed. I didn't get emotionally involved again. After that, everything went very smoothly. With my encouragement, Xavier Yates gradually picked himself up. After all, he was still a bit clever, and the Xie family only had this only child. The Xie family spent a lot of money to support him. Finally, when Xavier Yates graduated from university, he was finally barely able to show some strength. He officially returned to the circle of second-generation heirs like us. After that, Xavier Yates started his own business. I went home and started preparing to take over the business. When Xavier Yates's company was just starting to pick up, he asked me to marry him. I smiled and said yes. Very dramatically, the day after he proposed, the heroine of his youth story, Evelyn Sue, flew back from abroad. After that, Xavier Yates never mentioned the engagement between the two families. He carefully kept Evelyn Sue by his side, as if he was sure that I would be crazy about love and hurt his sweetheart, and tried every means to avoid any chance of me meeting Evelyn Sue. What he didn't know was that the day after he hired Evelyn Sue as his personal secretary, I also found myself someone to confide in. Someone who was more considerate, gentler, and had more potential than Xavier Yates. Most importantly, he came from a less privileged background than Xavier Yates, and knew how to be grateful, so he would never be able to surpass me. When Evelyn Sue came to the door, I had just finished a business meeting and was taking a break in the living room with my junior secretary Ethan Chase. Ethan Chase is very perceptive, not just at work. For example, just now, he only glanced at me more than once after Evelyn Sue entered the room, and then very tactfully went out to buy me coffee. This free time was enough for me to talk to Evelyn Sue. I looked at Evelyn Sue sitting across from me. Her skin was smooth and delicate. Her dress was fresh and neat, and her soft, shiny black hair was tied up high. Judging from her appearance, she is one of the more niche types of eternal muse that has been popular in recent years. Evelyn Sue was like this in high school, and among the crowd of little white flowers, she attracted the attention of Xavier Yates with her rebellious attitude. Xavier Yates said that he had never seen a soul as free as Evelyn Sue's, so he followed her without hesitation, embarking on his downward path of free degradation. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but smile, relax my posture, lean casually against the sofa, and raise my hand to make a "please go ahead" gesture towards her. Compared to my relaxation, Evelyn Sue was on full alert. She was quick to gather her emotions. Not long after she sat down, her eyes welled up with tears. Then she looked up at me and gave a forced smile. "I heard that Miss Song and Yen are going to get engaged. These days, Yen has been very upset about what happened between him and me, and he feels very guilty." Hearing her start with the lowest form of demonstration and testing, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. I couldn't help but pinch my eyebrows and interrupt her. "Miss Sue, what do you think of him?" I said, pointing to the door. Evelyn Sue looked in the direction I was pointing and saw Ethan Chase standing guard at the door. He was tall and slender, and even in a cheap suit, he had a unique and refined bearing. He was holding the drink I had brought him carefully in his hands, and his eyes had never left me since we got back. Seeing that I was looking at him, Ethan Chase gave me a faint smile through the glass door. The strength of the smile was just right, expressing attachment without being greasy. Of course, it wasn't that Ethan Chase was naturally talented, but that he had carefully considered my preferences and practiced repeatedly to be able to come to me like this. I know all of this. But I don't care what kind of person Ethan Chase is at heart. As long as he behaves in a way that makes me comfortable, he can stay by my side. This is the difference between me and Xavier Yates. He devoted all his energy to pursuing a soul conceived in his mind, but he couldn't even recognize the most basic disguise of another person, and in the end, he was played by someone whose status was lower than his. Perhaps anticipating what I was going to say next, Evelyn Sue's face turned a lot uglier, but she didn't have the capital to lash out at me, so she could only force a smile and follow my words with a pale face, saying, "This gentleman looks like a talented person, and he is also very loyal to Miss Song. He is a rare." I snorted, cutting her off again. Evelyn Sue's expression was a little strained, but I didn't care, just smiling and speaking to her. As long as I like it or this type, I can have as many people as I want. Evelyn Sue understood my meaning and began to feel a little uneasy. Someone who seems kind, simple, different, and indispensable to me may seem unique to Xavier Yates, but it is not what I am looking for. I will not pin my ideals on someone. With each word I said, Evelyn Sue's face opposite me grew more and more unpleasant, and her hand holding the bag tightened. "So, Miss Sue, you are exerting your strength in the wrong direction." In the end, I leaned back slightly on the sofa and raised my hand slightly, and immediately someone outside the door understood and entered the room. They reached out to Evelyn Sue, and Evelyn Sue had to take out the voice recorder from her bag. Ethan Chase stood next to me the whole time, leaning over to hand me my still warm coffee. From beginning to end, his eyes were only on me, as if everyone else in the room was dispensable to him. In response, I simply reached out and patted his head in satisfaction. Evelyn Sue could no longer sit still, grabbed the bag that Xavier Yates had just bought her, and fled. "Miss, she is probably still hiding other recording devices on her person," said the assistant standing next to me, standing up straight and speaking respectfully. "It's fine. She's already figured it out," I said nonchalantly, then picked up the financial report on the table and read it. Yes, I knew from the beginning. Evelyn Sue is an ambitious person who knows what she wants and knows the right path to take at every step. Otherwise, she wouldn't have walked away so readily when Xavier Yates' mother approached her on the eve of graduation. She took enough money to go abroad and enjoy an elite education that she would otherwise not have been able to access, and then waited for the passage of time and memories to make her the eternal moonlight in Xavier Yates' heart. Evelyn Sue has always been clear-headed. Today's test made her realize that I will never be her match. We are not even in the same ring. What I pursue is different from what she and Xavier Yates pursue. I don't take the initiative to oppose her, and she won't be stupid enough to create a difficult enemy for herself. Besides, I have always admired ambitious women. I can praise their ruthlessness in achieving their goals, as long as they don't get in my way. Sure enough, after that, Evelyn Sue never came to see me again. On the contrary, she kept a closer eye on Xavier Yates. On the grounds of insecurity, she asked Xavier Yates to decline all occasions that required the two of us to appear together. This made the engagement banquet, which had been long overdue, seem more and more like a joke. At a recent gathering of the two families, Mrs. Xie gave Xavier Yates an order to the effect that he must appear at the banquet. Xavier Yates agreed, but halfway through the dinner, the Xie family butler received news that he had been in an accident. Xavier Yates said he was seriously injured and needed to go to the hospital immediately. He hung up the phone without waiting for Mrs. Xie to take the phone and ask any questions. It seems that he was certain that I would not be angry with him, and Xavier Yates responded to me with a clumsy lie and a perfunctory attitude. But this time it was a family gala hosted by the Xie family. His behavior has embarrassed both families. In front of the Yates family elders, my mother and I looked embarrassed, but in our hearts we were actually overjoyed, hoping that Xavier Yates' performance would be even more brain-damaged. Mrs. Xie took my mother's hand and tried to say something nice, but my mother shook her off and turned around and walked away. After all, she is a well-known figure in the entire Seabreeze city business community, and now she has been humiliated like this by a junior like Xavier Yates. It would not be unreasonable for her to have the place wrecked immediately. Mrs. Xie could not bear to keep her there, and could only turn to me for help. I smiled at her, and still accompanied them through the entire dinner. I just didn't say a word the whole time. In the eyes of the Yates family elders, this was a sign that I had suffered a lot of injustice. Before leaving, Mrs. Xie took my hand and put the violet glass jade bracelet she had bought at a sky-high price a while ago on my hand. I pushed it away twice, but finally accepted it with difficulty. Yuan, you are a good child. Over the years, I have seen how you feel about Yan. Don't worry, Yan is an asshole, but the Xie family will not let you suffer. After hearing Mrs. Xie say this, I finally let out a heartfelt smile. When I got home, my mother was sitting on the sofa in her loungewear, playing a game. I kicked off my heels and clumsily rubbed up against her. Did it work? She asked. It worked, I said. This time it was at least 2 billion, or your face is worth a lot of money. After saying this, I reached out and pinched her shoulder. My mother narrowed her eyes in contentment, and I looked at her fierce eyebrows. Time seemed to favor her in particular, and even though it passed relentlessly, it could only carve out an even stronger posture in her. Powerful, ruthless, and cold. This was the outside world assessment of her, and also the goal I pursued. I remembered when I was 18 years old, someone claiming to be my biological father appeared. He handed me the cake wrapped in pink ribbon in his hands, and told me that from now on, I would be loved by my father. He said, "You have been educated by your mother to become a monster like her, but girls are born to be spoiled. Now that your father is here, you just need to be a beautiful princess." After listening to his words, I laughed softly. The man thought I approved of what he said, his eyes shining with excitement and greed that he could barely hide. He had calculated it correctly, and appeared only after I officially had the right to inherit on the day I turned 18. As long as he had my approval, he would have the capital to contend with my mother. But the next moment, he was politely invited to leave by me. I used a little trickery, and he never had the opportunity to harass my mother and me again in his life. Originally, I had someone look up information about my so-called biological father, but after hearing his words, I felt that there was no need to look anymore. I have seen enough people like this in my life, and their lives really have no nutritional value for reference. My mother once told me frankly that I was the product of her being tricked into getting pregnant. That man is a stain on her life. But my existence is not a disgrace to her. You are my daughter and an independent individual. How your father is as a person is not a reason for others to humiliate you. I respect all your choices, but I still hope that we can share the same aspirations and that you can stand by my side. In that way, our bond will be even stronger. I am the daughter of a mother who grew up wild, and I am her companion in battle. That is why my goal will never be just to be beautiful and loved. As long as you are strong enough, people will scramble to come up to you and love you. You can pick and choose the type you like. With the compensation given by the Xie family, I have taken over 2 more projects in Seabreeze City. My mother has registered a new company in a neighboring city as a reward for me, as a gift for my upcoming 26th birthday. In fact, I was not exactly clean-handed, but the Yates family elders were very tolerant. Ziyuan will sooner or later be our Xie family daughter-in-law, so why bother? Mrs. Xie said this with a loving smile on her face. After I heard this, I pretended to be shy and laughed. Anyway, today's Xavier Yates does not agree. Perhaps it is because the Xie family has increased the pressure on him. Xavier Yates' behavior became increasingly rebellious, and he even openly challenged his biological parents on many occasions. Evelyn Sue's departure on the eve of this attack was always a hurdle in Xavier Yates' heart. That youth that didn't end perfectly is a permanent regret in his heart, which Xavier Yates told me himself. When he said this, his face was full of melancholy. Although I still think that the best way to end a youth full of early love, drinking, fighting, drag racing, and skipping class is to go to jail. But I was all heartache for him, and when Xavier Yates saw this, he gave a bitter smile and said, "Forget it. What am I talking to you about? You're such a simple person. You'll never understand." I don't really understand anything else, but I understand one thing. Xavier Yates is a person who weighs 130 pounds, and probably 129 of those pounds are backbones. When Mrs. Xie forcibly separated him from Evelyn Sue, he took Evelyn Sue to heart even more. Now that the Yates family elders are eager to form a strategic alliance with my family, they still won't allow him to be with Evelyn Sue, which will push Xavier Yates, who is single-mindedly defending his love, to the extreme. I don't know if he means to or not. These days, the internet is full of pictures of Xavier Yates and Evelyn Sue entering and leaving places together. The man and woman in the picture are intimate, long beyond the boundaries between secretary and boss. The engagement banquet that should have been held has been delayed, and there have been quite a few questioning voices online. Now Xavier Yates' actions have undoubtedly confirmed the speculation that the strategic alliance between the two families has broken down. His mother took the opportunity to extort a large sum of money from the Xie family. Xie's parents seemed to be tired of having to keep covering for Xavier Yates. They directly spoke to Xavier Yates, saying that if he insisted on choosing Evelyn Sue, he would forever lose his status as the heir of the Xie family. This tactic might have had some deterrent effect on him in the past. But nowadays, Xavier Yates believes he has the strength to stand up to his family. He openly declared on social media that he would never be a puppet at the mercy of others again in this life. In the past, he was too weak and lost the love of his life, but now that he has the ability, he will definitely protect the woman he loves. His threats sound loud and clear, but while he has been away for a while, he is still enjoying the convenience that being the only son of the Xie family brings him. It's 2023, and netizens are no longer the same as in the past, who love to read mindless. Greasy Bossman texts. Xavier Yates' comment section is full of this kind of style. No way, if I read it correctly, what this guy means is that he wants to break off relations with his parents who have raised him for more than 20 years for the sake of a little hussy. I heard that he is an only child, and all the resources of the Xie family have been poured into him, and in the end, he has been cultivated into a love idiot. If I were his parents, I would be angry too. I'm dying of laughter. I heard that he's a scumbag who proposed to his fiancée the day before and cheated on her with his secretary the next day. I don't think it's worth raising this kind of person. I might as well raise a piece of barbecued pork. I'm really laughing with anger. The biggest worry in the lives of these rich playboys is being dumped by their girlfriends before this attack. I'm fighting against you rich people. Can you unhappy rich people keep it down? You're annoying the hell out of me. Can the Yates family elders adopt me? I don't mean anything by it, I just love being manipulated and used as a puppet. Please feel free to use money to manipulate my life. Amidst the cries of puppet brother and freedom sister locked in a relationship, Xavier Yates silently closed the comment section. Out of the two families' current interests and public relations needs, I still called Xavier Yates. I want to discuss with him how to resolve this matter. But instead, he just mocked me. What, you don't love me anymore? You can't handle it anymore? Vivian Song, I've already agreed to marry you, so you should be happy. For so many years, your dream and pursuit has been to become Mrs. Yates, right? I'll give you the title, and you can stay out of my business. Just keep things casual, okay? Do you know how disgusting it is for you to think you can control me on behalf of my mother? I held the phone in my hand, tried to remember, and once again confirmed that he had proposed first. I hadn't begged for it. No, I can't be like you and have no bottom line, I said, and decisively hung up the phone. I turned around and posted the recording online, unilaterally announcing that I had broken off the engagement with Xavier Yates. This caused a huge uproar. I don't know if the Yates family elders were convinced that I loved Xavier Yates desperately, or if they really didn't want to deal with him anymore, but in the end they didn't send anyone to do public relations and control the comments for Xavier Yates. Xavier Yates and Evelyn Sue were scolded really badly. Later, when he called again to ask me to delete the recording, he was able to control his tone and emotions. I laughed out loud. I can't pamper him? I directly blocked Xavier Yates' phone number, and I pinned his homepage on the top of the page. After that, I focused on my work and didn't hear much from him again. I saw Xavier Yates again on an unexpected occasion. The results of the project I had recently worked on were very good, and my mother gave me 3 days off. As I was barefoot at the beach, enjoying the tranquility brought by the sound of the waves, an angry voice came from the side. Vivian Song. I opened my eyes and saw Xavier Yates standing not far away, looking at my face, which was not in a good condition. Next to him stood Evelyn Sue, silently averting her gaze and pretending to be deaf. Is this funny to you? You're so persistent, following me wherever I go. Are you the dog my mother hired to spy on me? He said, getting a little excited and walking quickly towards me. Behind him, Evelyn Sue reached out to stop him, but she couldn't. Just as Xavier Yates was pointing his finger at my nose and cursing, saying that no one should interfere in his life, even if his mother had called me. He wouldn't give in. Ethan Chase returned. He arrived before anyone else, and his fists arrived first. Xavier Yates was knocked to the ground by his punch, and his face immediately turned red and swollen. I silently ended the call with my mother-in-law and then took advantage of the time Ethan Chase was beating up Xavier Yates to leave a voice message for my mother-in-law with a sobbing voice. I said, "Sorry, Anicia, I accidentally ran into Yen and wanted to give you the good news." I didn't expect him to get so emotional, and I didn't even get a chance to explain. My mother-in-law's chat interface was silent for a long time, and it was only after a while that 4 words popped up. Don't worry about him. Oh. I raised an eyebrow at the sight. It seems that the Yates family elders have really been hurt this time. For a moment, I remembered the recent rumors that the Yates family elders were building a trumpet. It seems that Xavier Yates has indeed been abandoned. It's just that Xavier Yates himself doesn't seem to know yet. He was pinned to the ground by Ethan Chase, who hurled out harsh words like they were free. The more he said, the worse he got. In the end, he still didn't learn his lesson and kept on cursing, and then used his big face to fiercely beat Ethan Chase's fists. In the end, it even made Evelyn Sue cry. She knelt next to Xavier Yates and kept on saying, "Stop hitting. Please stop hitting." Ethan Chase ignored her, and it wasn't until I spoke that he stopped. "Enough," I said softly, looking at Xavier Yates, lying on the ground. The once handsome face was now swollen like a pig's head. Only his eyes still burned with raging anger, Xavier Yates glaring at me as if he wanted to burn a hole through me with his eyes. "Xavier Yates, I came here just to relax, and meeting you was an accident. You suddenly losing your temper spoiled my mood, and it's not a good omen for me. It's best if we don't meet again in the future." My tone was calm, but Xavier Yates seemed to be hurt by my cold attitude. He was stunned, as if unable to accept this sudden change in my attitude towards him. Just as I was about to turn and leave with Ethan Chase, Xavier Yates suddenly got up from the ground behind me. "Vivian Song," he shouted my name, pointing at Ethan Chase next to me and asking, "Who is he?" I was about to answer when suddenly I felt a strong pull on my arm, and I was embraced in Ethan Chase's arms. In that moment, my face sank. But Ethan Chase seemed to be oblivious to this and continued to embrace me in a very overbearing manner, speaking to Xavier Yates in the distance. "You don't need to know who I am. You only need to know that Yuan Yuan is my woman." When he said this, it seemed that he was nervous himself, and the hand that was holding my shoulder tightened until it hurt a little. He was taking a risky move, and for this reason, he was so guilty that he didn't even dare to look me in the eye. "Fuck you. She's my fiancée." Xavier Yates flew into a rage and rushed towards us. But this time, Evelyn Sue stopped him. In the scuffle, Evelyn Sue was pushed to the ground. Xavier Yates suddenly came back to his senses and, in a flurry, picked Evelyn Sue up and left. "Let go," I said coldly, then mercilessly slapped Ethan Chase. I saw his fist under his cuffs clench and unclench. A row of black-clad bodyguards I had summoned were standing not far away. I turned and left, and Ethan Chase hurriedly followed. This time, however, he was left behind. "Why?" I heard him shout behind me. "You obviously like me too, don't you?" I ignored him and returned to Seabreeze City, surrounded by bodyguards. After the incident, Ethan Chase was dismissed at the speed of light and given adequate compensation. Ethan Chase was not convinced, and eventually came to me. "I don't understand," he asked me with red eyes and choking voice. "I just wanted to protect you. I just hugged you." Yes, in his eyes. He just hugged me. But we actually know very well that I don't need him to make such gestures to protect me. And what would happen if I let go of such small actions with a testy meaning? Ethan Chase's ambitions have been fed, and his actions are not disciplined. And what I hate most is when others test my bottom line. Especially when I have already given him enough. He has behaved to my satisfaction, and I have not deprived him of any money or resources. And he took what he wanted, but could not keep his promise to not cross the line. It was really an ugly sight to see him wanting more. Whether Ethan Chase really wants pure love, or is targeting the business and family behind me, I will not let someone like this stay by my side. I can give him enough benefits, but I will not allow him to enter my orbit in this way, trying to control me and even become my rival. Thinking about this, I can't help but sigh. Sure enough, a man's words can only be heard and then forgotten. When Xavier Yates came to see me again, I had already changed people by my side. He is still the same 1.89 meters tall, still has the same innocent face, and is even more obedient than Ethan Chase. It was obvious that this was my current aesthetic. But Xavier Yates looked as if he had been relieved, and he gave me a smile. "I knew you were deliberately getting someone to anger me. Since you have already dismissed him, I don't blame you. Don't get angry like this again in the future." As he spoke, his gaze fell on my new secretary and his brows furrowed again. "Dismiss this one as well, and I will assign someone from my company to you afterwards." I looked at his face, which was still swollen from the previous day's beating. I gave my secretary a look, and she understood, and politely asked Xavier Yates to leave. Xavier Yates's face darkened, and he looked at me. Yuan, what does this mean?" "I thought I made myself clear last time," I said, pulling out my phone and displaying Xavier Yates' previous declaration on social media that he would fight the world for Evelyn Sue. "Now everyone knows that the strategic alliance between the two companies has broken down, and if CEO Xie is photographed entering or leaving my company by the paparazzi again, it won't reflect well on either party." I thought I had spoken objectively and rationally, and had even included a little kindness towards Xavier Yates. But after listening to this, Xavier Yates was surprisingly angry. His hands kept clenching, and finally, he slammed them down on the coffee table. "I thought you understood me. Vivian Song, I always thought you were different from everyone else." He looked so betrayed and deceived, as if I were the one who cheated. I was going to have the security guard throw him out, but since we were childhood sweethearts, I patiently advised him, "You'd better treat me like everyone else."
"Why?"
"One has had a hard time abroad for many years. I just want to make up for what I owe her. Why can't you guys just let her be?" He acted like he didn't understand a word I was saying and kept talking about himself. I didn't hesitate and called the building security. When Xavier Yates was being escorted away, I calmly reiterated to him, "Mr. Xie, the strategic alliance between the two families has been terminated. Now you and I are strangers with no relationship. I hope you will not show up at Song's company again. You are not welcome here." It was only at this point that Xavier Yates seemed to realize that I was serious about drawing a line with him. His eyes were vacant for a moment, and he subconsciously muttered, Yuan? He didn't get to say the next words either because I had him thrown out directly. The world finally quieted down, and I looked at the time. Very well. I was delayed by Xavier Yates for a precious 40 minutes, and I had to stay late at night to make up for it. Xavier Yates and Evelyn Sue broke up again, because Xavier Yates' company went bankrupt, and because the news that Xie's mother was pregnant with her second child spread. These two events happened almost inevitably in tandem. After all, the Yates family elders had played a part in Xavier Yates's successful business venture. Realizing that Xavier Yates had truly become an outcast, Evelyn Sue quickly cleaned out his last remaining assets and ran away. Xavier Yates was truly devastated this time, and his entire being became decadent and unkempt. While he was drunk and living the dream, everyone else was busy. The Xie family was busy welcoming a new life, while my mother and I were busy expanding the market for our products. In the past 2 years, there have been a lot of new trends on the internet, such as the short series that became popular at the beginning of this year. The revenue from Get Out shocked everyone. Not only my family, but several leading companies in Hoi Hoi wanted to monopolize this big cake. Last month, the few major anchors that the Xie family signed to test the water were all reported for tax evasion and sent to prison. Now everyone is very cautious, and one family's move is besieged by hundreds. It's just a game of fame and fortune. No matter how filthy it gets, it will all be covered up under a glossy veneer. The Xie family sent us another invitation to the family gala. This time, the person delivering the invitation was one of the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the Xie family's branch. He also had a very pleasing appearance and personality, which matched my aesthetic. During the dinner, Mrs. Xie deliberately sat me next to him. Seeing that I didn't refuse, she beamed. I knew what she meant. The Xie family also wanted to expand their market and didn't want to give up their strategic alliance with the Song family. But they had just disinherited one heir. The next one was still just an embryo, and the future was uncertain. Xie's mother wanted to seize me in this way. I half-reluctantly agreed, without saying yes or no. Xie's mother was a little unhappy, but Xie's father didn't seem to mind. He was very pleased to have a child at such an old age, and at the banquet, he couldn't help but drink a few too many cups. Later, he even said things like, "Your Song family is ruled by 2 women, and in the end, this family business will have to change its surname." Upon hearing this, my mother smiled and walked up to him. With a cup of red wine, she poured it over his head, despite his smug gaze. "Are you sober now?" she asked, still as graceful as ever. Father Xie knew he was in the wrong, and suppressed the anger in his face as he apologized to my mother. But the disdain in his eyes when he looked at her remained unchanged. Not just this time, but I had observed long ago that the way he looked at my mother always carried an inexplicable sense of mockery and superiority. This time, I did not use my usual gentle facade to deal with the situation. When my mother refused to accept his apology, I poured a glass of red wine over the Xie relative next to me, who was flattering me. The young man's head was almost about to pop with a question mark. I returned his gaze with a nod of affirmation, leaving no doubt that I was taking out my anger on him. "Sorry, I don't really trust your family's values, so there's no need to talk about it further," I said, and together with my mother, I left the venue in high profile. The farce ended with the Xie family apologizing to us publicly. Over the years, the strength of the 2 families has long since changed from being initially comparable to the Xie family being left behind by the Song family. My mother gave them half a month to cool down before reluctantly forgiving them. The next morning, the Xie family sent a new young man over. He appeared out of the blue while I was jogging in the morning and told me it was a coincidence. I didn't refuse and teased the cat like him to walk with me for a while. Before I could finish listening to his words, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of me. It was Xavier Yates, whom I hadn't seen for a long time. He looked a little different from before, having recovered from the shock. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, but before he could say anything, his gaze fell on the person next to me. It was obvious that they knew each other, and the person next to me spoke first, calling Xavier Yates cousin. Xavier Yates ignored him and turned to look at me, asking softly, Yuan, why are you with him?" I shrugged and said, "This is the Xie family's new strategic alliance partner, and I'm cultivating a relationship with him." After hearing this, Xavier Yates' entire body froze. His eyes then became gloomy, and he took a few steps forward, trying to grab my hand, which I avoided by reaching out. Seeing this, the man next to him, quite smugly, stepped in front of me and said, "Cousin, why have you been wandering around for a while, even losing your gentlemanly bearing?" Xavier Yates became a little impatient and shouted over him to me, Yuan, I sent you a message, didn't you see it? A message? It seemed that my secretary had indeed reported to me some time ago that there was a lot of spam in my personal email. I wasn't interested in finding out more and let my secretary deal with it all by herself. It seems that my posture of deep thought once again caused Xavier Yates to misunderstand. He became excited again. He looked at me and said firmly, I understand. You didn't do it willingly. Wait for me. I will never let them do this to you again. After he finished, he turned around and left. I was left staring at his cousin. In order to find out what happened, I asked my secretary to restore the spam in my mailbox. Because there were so many, he thoughtfully picked out the most representative ones for me to see. At a glance, I saw, Yuan, I misunderstood you in the past. Evelyn Sue has been lying to me. It turns out that you are the only one in the world who truly loves me. Wait for you. I quickly pressed the screen off before I could read the rest of the message. I was afraid that if I read it any longer, my brain would shrink. Sometimes I really admire this man, Xavier Yates. In recent years, due to the impact of emerging industries, the companies under the control of these old families in Haishur are all undergoing transformation. Several families are fighting to the death, and the second generation of our generation, who grew up together, have already successively joined this war without smoke. Under these circumstances, only Xavier Yates has fallen into such a state, and what's on his mind is still relationships. Sometimes I even feel that he is the retribution for the Xia parents. Those two old foxes have not been clean in their hands and feet over the years. In the beginning, they did whatever they could to steal business from each other. Now their son is a stupid, useless good-for-nothing. I thought Xavier Yates was just blowing smoke when he said that last time. But not long after, I heard that Xavier Yates had returned to the Xia family. A son who has already been considered an outcast won't be able to seize power, even if he returns. Neither my mother nor I have high hopes for Xavier Yates, so we just speeded up the process at hand. In the past, the Yates family elders had planted many landmines in the project they had let us have in Xavier Yates' name. They had no intention of letting go of the Song family, a piece of fat meat. Even if the strategic alliance had been successful, the two old things from the Xia family would have found an opportunity to blow up the landmine and completely ruin the Song family. Especially Xia Fu, whose ambition was never hidden. It was at his suggestion that Xavier Yates subconsciously became close to me when he was a student. I just didn't expect his son to be intercepted by a commoner girl from an aristocratic school. Xavier Yates went off to play the tyrant, but the rivalry between the Xia and Song families did not stop. My mother accepted everything the Xia family gave her, but the old fox thought he had dug a pit that would sooner or later trip him up. We thought it would drag on for a while, but none of us expected that Xavier Yates would give us such a big surprise. Mrs. Xia's baby was aborted by him, and Xavier Yates is once again the sole heir of the Xia family. While Mrs. Xia is still lying in the hospital, Xia Fu has already reappeared in public with Xavier Yates. His own son killed his unborn brother in a power struggle, but Father Xia was not ashamed, but rather very gratified. He believed that Xavier Yates had grown up, truly understood the cruelty of the world, and had become a member of the world where the weak are preyed upon by the strong. To be honest, even my mother and I felt that he was a bit of a pervert by this point. But when I thought about what this old fox had done when he was young, I didn't find it surprising. He was the most mediocre of the previous generation of Xia family heirs, but he relied on having no bottom line and personally sent his two brothers, who should have had a bright future, to prison and finally inherited the Xia family. Such a person, after gaining power, is most likely to become arrogant and look down on their former opponents. When Xia father brought Xavier Yates back to the door, in their expectations. At this time, I should have rushed out of the room with excitement and run into Xavier Yates's arms. However, my mother and I flew directly to Paris for vacation, and the Xia family, father and son, were unable to even enter my home. Xavier Yates did not believe that I would treat him this way, and obstinately refused to leave the outside of my villa. He came here full of self-satisfaction, and now he is as dispirited as can be. The butler tried unsuccessfully to persuade him to leave, so he launched a drone in the courtyard to give us a live broadcast with a full range of views. In the end, it was the ashen-faced Xia father who forcibly took him away. Then my phone started ringing non-stop, so I gave it to my secretary, who was responsible for blocking the unfamiliar numbers that kept coming in. After the meal, my mother elegantly wiped the corners of her mouth. I asked her, "Are you going to close the net?" She looked at me and gave a shallow smile, raising the corners of her lips. After watching a play for a long time, it's inevitable that you'll get bored. I bowed my head, put down the knife and fork in my hands, and spoke softly, then, "Please let me get back this debt for you." Negative news about the person in power in the Song family spread overnight across every platform on the internet. The reason why the situation is so serious is because someone in it accused my mother of hiring someone to kill someone, and I was an accomplice to her hiding the body. The news reported that my mother had a love stroke and got pregnant with someone else's child 26 years ago. Afterwards, in order to inherit the family business, she turned around and accused the man of rape. She sent her lover to prison with her own hands. The other person has been living like a rat for so many years. But if the other party was really a rapist, why would my mother still be willing to give birth to his offspring? Having reached this point in story, it seems that some things have been revealed. What's more, the mysterious whistleblower also pointed out that 8 years ago, on my 18th birthday, the man had traveled a long way to find Hai just to celebrate the coming-of-age birthday of his biological daughter, whom he had never met. But after that, he never appeared again and just vanished from the face of the earth. After a series of entrapment charges, it is hard not to think of my mother buying a murder and hiding the body. I calmly listened to the secretary's report, then turned to the person sitting across from me and raised an eyebrow. The person who exposed me accused me of being an accomplice. "Do you think so too?" "Impossible," Xavier Yates, sitting across from me, slowly spoke. He looked at me with deep and lingering eyes. "They don't know you. You are the most innocent and kind girl in the world." Compared to before, Xavier Yates was much calmer. I looked at the gloom between his brows and, after a long silence, I let out a laugh. "Xavier Yates, perhaps you don't understand me either." He didn't say anything in response, but just turned his head and spoke his purpose. "The Song family is going to collapse, and the police are already preparing a case for investigation. Yuan, if you marry me, I will ensure that your life will be no different from what it is now." When he said this, his eyes were full of his determination to win me over. "Let's wait a bit longer, just in case there's a reversal," I said somewhat perfunctorily. Xavier Yates wanted to say something else, but he closed his mouth again and looked at me with pity in his eyes. He now understood his father's tactics as well. If Xia's father intended to teach my family a lesson, then even if this matter was fake, it would eventually become real. The calls for a thorough investigation were growing louder and louder on the internet. I can understand the feelings of netizens. Previously, the petty squabbles in the rich families were just seen as entertainment. But when a human life is involved, the matter must be taken seriously. So on the day the police car pulled up in front of Song's house, the whole internet was watching with bated breath. Many people gathered outside the Song family gate, broadcasting live on their mobile phones. Everyone was waiting for a result. And the result was that the police found nothing at the Song family. 3 days later, Xia's parents were arrested by the police on suspicion of attempted murder. And my biological father, who had been searched for by the entire network, also appeared in front of everyone's expectations. Yes, there was no such thing as hiring someone to kill someone and destroy the body. 8 years ago, I bought him an island, and over the years, he has been farming the land on the island and living an isolated life. As for why he was willing to listen, from the time he successfully avoided the Song family's bodyguards and came to me, I told him that the person who sent him wanted his life. He's not stupid, and quickly figured out his usefulness as a pawn in this game. So he obediently accepted my arrangements and cooperated with me in creating the illusion that he had been dealt with by the Song family. And Xia Fu, thinking he had a hold on this, has regarded the entire Song family as his Nang Zhongwu for all these years. Until a while ago, he found someone to expose what happened back then, trying to teach me a lesson. I took the opportunity to withdraw some of the bodyguards protecting the safety of my biological father. His whereabouts were exposed, and in recent days, he has experienced at least no less than 6 car accidents, burglaries, and falling objects from a great height. He was really scared and cried for someone to find my contact information for help. He no longer refused to face my request for him to come forward and identify the Xie family. He not only told me how the Yates family elders hired someone to kill my mother, but also accused the father of raping my mother 26 years ago, which resulted in my birth. His goal was to teach my mother a lesson, to make her understand that women should go home and marry and give birth, instead of competing with him for business. The two old foxes from the Yates family were sent to prison. Xavier Yates stood outside my house all night, braving the rain and wind, begging me to let his parents off the hook. "I told you there would be a twist," I said, smiling as I looked down at him from the second floor. "Don't get too happy just yet. The foxes aren't going down so easily," my mother said softly from behind me. I nodded and smiled lightly. I showed Xavier Yates the way out. The Xie family has fallen, but the Xie family has not fallen yet. It is just a matter of changing the person in power. Everything is not yet hopeless. Do you have to be so extreme? Xavier Yates looked at me with a deep gaze. I remembered that half a month ago when he came to see me, I asked him, "If the truth is not what the public says, will you help me?" Xavier Yates' reply to me at that time was, Yuan. Don't think too much. Just know that I can protect you and always provide you with a harbor." He spoke with a deep tone of voice, but it couldn't hide the essence of his wanting to lock me in a cage and turn me into a canary. In that case, I can only repay him in kind. The day after Xie was reported for major tax evasion, I boarded a plane to Iceland on vacation with my secretary. Just when things couldn't get any worse, Xavier Yates was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer. The absurdity of his youth, which had led to habits such as reckless drinking and speeding, had come back to haunt him years later. Xavier Yates was no longer able to support Xie's. Not long after, Xie's parents were convicted of several crimes, including economic crimes, attempted intentional homicide, and organizing, leading, and participating in a criminal organization. By the time they got out of prison, Xavier Yates would have been 3 years old again. When the plane landed, my secretary told me that Xavier Yates had been calling me. I thought about it for a while, and then picked up the phone. Xavier Yates's voice was hoarse on the other end. He said, "I'm going to die. Are you really not going to regret it? Vivian Song, from now on, no one in the world will love you like I do. Like you." I couldn't help but laugh. Like you, who cheated the day after getting engaged, or like you, who rushed over to rub salt in my wounds when I was in trouble. Xavier Yates, you are really not worthy of being my opponent, and you are despicable as a human being. Xavier Yates was taken aback at the other end of the line. It took him a while to find his voice again. "Vivian, you don't understand. I truly love you. You just made the same mistake as every other man in the world?" I laughed out loud. "It's okay, Xavier Yates. I understand." After saying that, I gave a small nod to the secretary next to me, who immediately understood what I meant. He leaned his head against my palm and obediently called out, "Mississippi. Vivian Song. Who is he?" Xavier Yates' voice exploded on the other end of the line. I ignored him and just said softly on the phone, "You know, the reason Evelyn Sue returned to China was because I arranged for someone to reveal your current situation to her. Let her know that her old lover has become successful and that he still thinks about her." She came here immediately. What I didn't expect was that Xavier Yates would not even pretend to be interested in Evelyn Sue, but would actually jump at the chance to get together with her. Not only that, but he also took the opportunity to give me a few kicks, filling his mind with the fantasy of 2 women falling madly in love with him to gain spiritual satisfaction. I cried myself to sleep. Who on earth would want to date a guy like that? Late at night, my mother called. "You've done well," my mother's voice said through the phone, her voice tinged with moist tears. I heard her say, "I'm sorry for trapping you in my hatred for the first 20 years of your life. From now on, I hope you can take control of your own life and soar freely." "This is what I want to do, Mother," I said to myself. "To be born with your bloodline, to be taught by you, and to avenge you. This is the sweetest thing for me." I silently completed the sentence in my heart and turned to look into the darkness of the night. Memories once again pulled me back. On the day I turned 18, that calculating man appeared before me. I didn't bother to learn about his life, but instead turned around and asked someone to find out who had sent him. Following the clues, I learned some past events. 30 years ago, there was a rising star in the business world. She was a generous and beautiful woman from a distinguished family with a very high level of education and an ambition that no one else had. Her first half of life was extremely successful, with loving elders, a successful career, and a lover with whom she was in a free relationship. However, it was that man who seemed modest and refined, respected her personal will. After being bribed by her opponent, he drugged and raped her and replaced her birth control pills afterwards. The woman discovered she was pregnant after she sent her opponent to prison. It was a critical period in her career, and the company she founded was on the verge of going public. She wanted to abort the baby, but her parents, who had always loved her, ordered her to go home and give birth. She gave birth to the child to continue the family line. At the same time, someone stole the company's bidding documents. Her rivals stood in front of her, shouting at her to go back and give birth to the baby and to do her duty as a woman. The first half of her life, full of flowers and blossoms, was suddenly absurd and like a joke. It turned out that her parents' love and her lover's respect had never happened except under certain conditions. In the face of power and profit, human emotions turned out to be such unreliable things. That was the last compromise of her life. After October, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Ziyuan. She took her daughter away from the family and taught her child alone. In the end, before her parents died, she single-handedly rescued the declining family and officially took power. But the mocking voices never stopped. No matter how high she climbed, her former opponents always maintained a superior gaze, waiting to trample her back to the bottom. And now, those mocking voices and stares have finally disappeared completely. Yes, when I was very young, I noticed the contempt in the eyes of the Yates family elders when they spoke to my mother and the occasional saddened posture of my mother. From that moment on, I already knew who my target should be. I was 6 years old that year. I spent the next 20 years convincing the Yates family elders that I was devoted to their son. After all, it is difficult for even the most cunning old fox to question the sincerity of a 6-year-old girl. Even my own mother never suspected that I had approached Xavier Yates deliberately from the very beginning. But I will never forget that I am the child of my mother's blood, and I share her hatred. My goal is to climb the mountains my mother visited, not to be trapped in a cage obsessed with beauty and love. This is my lifelong creed, and it will never change.